and like the insulation.
So it's
factors
officially
of the
4 o'clock.
Yes.
And
So they might,
I
you might be
just
able to mix and match.
got this working, so that's good. When she gets here, it'll be ready. I'm trying to figure out where to set this up.
She should have arrived before now.
Yeah, definitely.
You're in contact with steps, yes?
Oh my goodness.
Hey, I'm Mark. I'm Suki. If we just ignore her, she'll. Come on in.
Yes, have a drink, have a donut.
Or two.
That's the way when I started coffee.
Oh, that's right. I was like,
Hey, folks.
Hello.
My name's Tim. Herman.
Max.
Max. Glad to meet you. My son's name is Max. He's getting married in April in
Congratulations.
Florida, which next week. So
Which
I
is
just
funny
left
because
about
that's
2
where we're from.
I'm kind of excited.
All right.
Now, is it Maxwell?
Maxfield.
No way.
Yes.
Because when my son was born, people go, "What's his name?" Max. They go, "Is it Maxfield?" I go, "No, it's Maxwell."
We've only met one other Max.
So as soon as she gets here, we'll set this up to point towards her.
Yeah, you just was a painter's match.
For now, we have people from the local Green Party already here,
And the donation forms.
and the donation forms, right? So go to her site. I'm going to put her site up here for a little bit so that you all can see what we're talking about.
The details of how he actually did all this thing.
Oh, neat. Yeah, we have a few books there.
Yeah, it actually shows step by step how he actually does all the paintings and what he did,
Nice.
how he constructed them and everything. But
Yeah.
it's in the library. Just have to keep checking out books, see some across it. I forget the name of it.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Or-
yeah, it's about the only place you have to go north actually to get south. It's like Miami, Florida, that's pretty progressive. But once you get past there, it's right wing, Bible beaten.
Oh, yeah.
Non-scientific.
You said an evil word there, son.
Not
You
as
said the word
scientific.
scientific. That's illegal. That should be banned from the English language.
What?
What?
You're just pulling my leg, Mr.
That's right. You're just making things.
No,
Well, my
if
change.
if you're from the South and that's your mentality, and you're ignorant and proud of it, believe me, I was raised around those people. I
Scientific
know.
is not a word that should be banned from the language of any meeting.
Well, if you're from the South, it probably should be, right?
Well, the South, people who say that they cannot believe that they are the descendants of a monkey on account of if they don't want to believe it, they don't have to. And that's called relativity. Belief in is unscientific, I grant you. But that they are a sociological group, like human beings everywhere. Well, that's true, and we can scientifically study these racist dogs.
Well, I call them sub-racial, that's all right.
Oh, that's not gonna work.
Yeah, I've had my time in the South, and I don't need to have any more.
You had your fill, yeah, so.
Especially Texas. Is part
Oh,
of
yes,
it.
when I was raised.
Texas and Mississippi are not part of the more civilized world.
Yeah. I was in Dallas, it wasn't as bad, but still.
Has everybody got a drink? Everybody comfortable?
In fact, yes, I have a drink. Yes, thank you. That's yours too.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
I don't think I turned it on correctly.
Yeah, I still haven't gotten hold of any
Absinthe makes the heart grow fonder, right?
Yeah.
I tried, I don't like licorice, and that's the biggest problem with absinthe.
Yeah.
There you go.
I didn't know there were sound effects with those things. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky. My nephew is an engineer, and he works with Safer Forge down here in Oregon City.
There you go.
And so he made that for me for Christmas.
Oh, how nice.
I know, it's awesome.
That's great.
But the cool thing about it is
Oh, that's not a commercial product, is
So
it?
that's
no,
a
it's
custom-
handmade, custom
Oh,
made,
my
like
goodness.
stuff.
custom-made thing of several hundreds to thousands of dollars value.
I'll tell you one thing, if you
It's priceless, but you could get it for like $100.
Several $100.
100 plus. The hilt alone, if you didn't want the cool blade, it still lights up and such, is like $60.
Is someone driving Jill here?
Yes, Seth has just gone to pick her up about an hour ago. He left here to go get her. He said it was about a half an hour.
Oh, so she's still at the airport.
No, she was in Mount Tabor.
Oh, that's
Not very far.
That's not very far.
So she should, yeah, she
no.
definitely.
Out of curiosity, what you doing not taking?
Isn't there another meeting?
There's a
Well, I
meeting.
thought there
Oh,
was
is
a
there?
strategy.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
A noon meeting.
Yeah, well, it was 1 to 3, and then I
We just came from our strategy.
Yeah,
meeting,
we
but that was
were
over
at
here.
the 1 to 3 meeting.
Yeah, that was.
And
She
that
wasn't there
was
though.
I wasn't there. Oh, okay.
That wasn't
And
Mount Tabor. That was just around
the
the
mark,
corner.
the
That was not the same
announcement
night.
was that she might be there. And the answer to the might was no, she wasn't.
Okay.
And your bathroom is located.
First door on the right. Or you can go all the way to the back. Is that
There's
correct?
two,
David?
yeah, there's one in the
I've been leaving these in the lounge where I stay in a building called 251 for, it's like, five rooms.
Michael Lamb, did I give you a card? No, I know, I got this. Here, that helps.
Oh, man. I'm Wahid, bro.
Radiation vet.
Wahid?
With a V, Wahid, yes.
The
Wahid,
VPDs in
yes.
the lounge. I
Unusual
left that
name.
issue of edibles. That's the one with the veteran issue. Disappeared overnight.
Awesome.
So I took
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
I go, "Arr."
Take a pile in there.
Yeah.
I'm sure they
It's
would-
so far,
Green Party member?
I'm not a
throwing
member.
it out. you know?
No, I was a, I was
Yeah.
a
Talk to you all via
Are you willing to join the
I
party?
don't answer.
I'd be interested.
He'd been
I like learning more.
Oh, okay.
He was past
Um,
the 8 months. and he had
Let me
marijuana oil.
suggest that the
You know,
basic
He was vaping and
idea
oil.
whoops, it's okay, to enter a party such as the
So
Green
we
Party,
have
Medical, I mean, it's hospital.
one
grade.
person
Democrats
online
or
with
Republicans.
us,
whose only value
probably
is
watching on YouTube.
go to a
If
party
you'd
who
like,
says these-
you
and our values
can
are not worth any cost.
log into your
Values are not
Gmail
kicked
account
in
and
down
join
the
the
road
Google
if it
Hangouts
means
so that we can actually interact with you
That's what I did. Before I sat, I looked at the hostess and she was unavailable.
until Jill gets here and we start.
So the party then has on record as part of its national thing, the nationally agreed basis, it has the 10 key values. And I can't rattle them all off, although I suppose I should. But I do know that there's nonviolence is a very strong one.
Yeah.
And nonviolence then means that we are not going to enforce the American empire. Armed might. And that's both Republicans and Democrats rely on. When they say, what are you going to do to pay the medical costs which arise? They don't say, well, gee, let's have a smaller army. We don't really need a big army. And no one's going to invade us. And we were supposed to have a peace dividend from the end of the Cold War. And that, we only added more.
Some dogs will just.
So this
tumble
constant
around the
warfare
car,
from,
border
well,
not
Pearl Harbor to today. I mean, there was World War II.
She's
And then before we knew it, there was the Korean War.
usually good.
And then after the Korean War was purportedly a ceasefire, not over. But the Korean War is kind of important.
Well, that was the one thing I didn't
Realize we went to war.
extricate.
We never asked.
Yeah.
And it says in the Constitution,
Yeah.
clear as day, Congress has the power to declare war. And that was under the Democrat. It wasn't a Republican.
Service dogs.
Power monger. It was a Democrat. He was governing this guy, the Democrat, in the Korean War. He was governing with the advice and consent of basically all the old
Oh,
school.
you can't even.
Dean Acheson was his Secretary of State. Dean Acheson is just a column of support from Wall Street. That's the Secretary of State. You recall that when the Republicans came into office, they were red baiting by talking about the Dean Acheson school of cowardly, cringing communism or something like that.
Cowardly Christian.
It is, that was doctrine, this idea that we would end a war.
Are you illiterate
And
or not?
not even consult Congress, not even ask.
I'm so literate, I'm illiterate.
Yes, of course.
We did it.
As is illiterate and proud of
Remember
it.
all the times in the, well, I don't suppose you remember the young person.
Oh, man.
All the times in the course,
Your door is open.
7 years.
Yeah, I think we have
of
those.
war
It kind of opens by itself
that we went to
sometimes.
court. progressives went to court and said it's unconstitutional for us to be. And every time the Supreme Court said, look, if the Congress wants the power to declare war, Congress can go ahead and win the war.
What is that? Little
It's a new bark box toy. It's a hit.
It's a reasonable thing. If Congress actually chose not to pay,
I saw
why
your,
then, yeah,
I saw your
the
photograph of your dog in the
president wouldn't
pool
be
in the
able to-
bathroom. That's
the
great.
Congress always.
She's a little
Rubber
smart.
stamp.
But she didn't have the rubber ducky. Where was the rubber ducky? Okay.
Oh,
It's true of
She's
the
a rubber ducky.
Soviet system. We, if you
Well, next
don't,
time.
if you don't leave the Democratic Republican
The cool
Party,
thing was
you're
that was at
watching the
her-
United States
A
continue to
daycare we
slide
dropped
into
her
the
at,
Soviet.
and it's a bone-shaped pool. And
You
it's
gotta
like-
get her one.
I did. It's about this big, and she just goes in there, and it's like her pool. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Doggy daycare with pool.
Yep,
Service.
yep. Not bad, huh?
Talking about slow-tempered pets.
Brown.
Yeah,
So-
she used to
all I
be
gotta
super
remember is the
pampered.
Yeah, you're good.
Super pampered.
Hazelnut Grove.
And then
Oh,
her daddy came along and gave her a new job.
What's that?
Well, she works for him now. She's his little
It's just
service
the
dog.
point when there was this emergency.
Oh.
She helps
just the
him a
point where
lot.
that asthma
What
was
do you
there,
need a service dog
going
for?
to actually deliver crime to
Yes.
half the homeless people. Good timing.
Struck when the iron was hot, and I was just organizing something on the corridor.
Well, I know there's certain people, I certainly live there.
And the city is kind of.
Well,
position with the
That's
building.
why,
But,
that's
you know,
why the Green Party
Yeah. Yeah.
is accessible to.
Cool.
Because that's what the
We
Green
did
Party
some work with
is.
Bitcoin.
The Green Party
Hi,
does
Millie.
not say,
And others who have joined us. If you're not joining in a
Right.
Google, if you're not logged into a Google account,
Right.
you're probably just watching on YouTube, and I won't be able to speak with you.
They're being given a lot.
Listen, you got it. Some people
It is the
live there.
Green Party assertion, all lives matter.
Right.
And if they're poor, they perhaps matter more. And that's the Green Party, what do I call it? That's the Green Party founding document. And you wouldn't become a leading politician within the Green Party.
That's
Unless you
all my
understood that
back.
component.
Right.
That people in
They
jail,
threw me out quicker than
people
I can say,
unemployed, people on the streets,
What you need to do.
people who are drug addicts.
Well, that's
They
what
are
Bitcoin
our friends, brothers, and neighbors.
mission is.
Yeah.
For everybody to.
But the issue is not whether or not they vote. The issue is, what are we doing for social justice today?
And whatever
Just because you have
spectators and
a
people
grassroots.
that are looking for the value in something don't see the intrinsic value of.
Well, we have a
anonymous.
Cascadia
You buy
chapter.
something and
That is the lead man in the so-called Portland Metropolitan chapter
They do.
of the Green Party. And Emma,
You have an
Emma
identification.
Lugo, right now, Emma Brown.
Crazy long.
And Emma Lugo is Brown is the
Able to
head
do something and
of
if
the
you've got
Washington
shields.
County Springs,
Nobody knows.
and also a member of the state coordinating committee.
anything.
There's a lot going on in terms of
Whereas
how
when you
we
buy
have
something with a
conversation.
credit card, they know what you're buying, they know where you're buying it. You know.
But you know, the important thing
Yeah,
about
we're
that,
a
it
partisan
makes the
political
government, right.
not an NGO.
Sure.
And
So you have two lives. You have a credit card life, a public life, and you have a private life.
Not
an NGO, sure, and,
I've
You have
seen
the most
one
scrutinized
life
life
or
in the
another
country.
cut us loose or throw us under the bus.
And I've seen.
You have to appear normal on the surface.
I try to appear normal, but sometimes I have trouble controlling the volume of my voice.
Okay, so-
Don't see that their faces have-
That's why there was a pause in my voice
I
when I
like Pee Wee
talked
myself.
about these community
That was a
outreaches of all those
combination.
Yeah, I
NGOs.
like Pee Wee's Playhouse. I used to watch that when I was.
Yeah.
I
I
could
was
care
a kid,
less
I just
for
like watching Pee Wee's Playhouse. It was clever.
He was
They're worth
very.
the hot air.
Yeah.
Oh,
They're worth a lot of money. They make, they're decent, good wage jobs if you can be an executive director. But they don't do a lot of, there's a lot of gaps.
cannot serve God and men.
Oh, yes, you can, do the same thing.
Hey, the right wingers are doing it every day, every day.
In God we trust, and they get the green to show it.
Well, exactly my previous speech. Mark.
What is your name?
Mike Arusi. Yeah. What's your name again?
Vahid.
Vahid.
Yes.
Arusi. All right.
Third Mark, are you?
If I need to step to the rear, we're gonna do a full body cavity.
Are you a second generation? Are you a second generation?
my parents are Baha'i, so not Persian.
Right. They don't
Persian
speak.
ancestry. I just started Farsi.
I worked with a guy from Persia.
I do.
So
He
then
was
the question is
Assyrian.
I'm
I didn't
sorry,
know they were-
Mike Yarusi's been interrupting all
Oh,
day.
I'm
gonna
sorry.
stop
Go
that.
ahead. Go ahead. You go.
It's a
Sorry.
reasonable
Excuse me,
conversation.
Michael. I apologize.
Yeah,
Yeah, he got me excited.
You are the generation born in the U.S. and you speak Farsi and English.
And
English, and English anyway, we won't go into whatever educational or linguistic context you've got. But there's Farsi and English without an accent. With absolutely pure Portland sounding English.
This is funny.
And
This is how many people. This is all because of the soul of
then
it.
your kids are not going to speak.
Some of those
Right
things
in the middle of.
I mean, my oldest is taking
Well,
French
Eugene would be
in high school.
Eugene.
Well,
But that's an older issue.
something like those
Yeah, it
NGOs.
is.
Yeah, right.
The Japanese model of teaching
Okay,
English,
August
it
15th.
gives them a lot of drills,
Yeah.
and they never do any talking.
They don't know.
And they know how to fill in the blanks with the right case.
Yeah.
The blanks arrive,
University
and
of
they're
Oregon.
trained to do that, but actually talking, hey,
Yeah, nothing. I got nothing.
excuse
So
me,
that's how you guys-
we won't go in.
Yeah,
You see, my
Have your own
own
shop or you
background
go
is
there?
my father was
My
a
wife works for a company called Atlassian.
first generation Italian, and he could speak, standard.
Hey, you. We haven't quite started. She's not gotten here yet.
Uh-huh.
But you're-
My job was growing.
Nice, thank you.
Oh,
What
okay.
what are you looking at on the screen right now? Is it her why she's running?
That's what you could tell.
Okay, so you don't see everybody?
And,
Yeah.
it's not something I understood.
Okay, so I want to chat. Can you chat? Can you see
But,
this?
she never learned any English.
The
My
only thing you
father
learn from American
also the same.
Did it come up? If you
And
on the left side of the screen, if it pops out, there's like a little blue chat box. That's how you would pop out the chat.
together all the uncles and aunts. They're speaking Italian.
My parents, funny, my parents would speak French.
I'm a little, I mean,
Don't know how you like to start.
So I'm gonna share my screen with you.
I made the company I worked for $1 million 3 years in a row. I didn't get a raise and then I got.
So now I'm gonna
Yes.
put my screen back up. I don't know if it's gonna like that. See that on the far right? It goes to infinity. But see if this blue thing right here, this brings up the chat.
Caregiver in the garden.
We would not sound as if we were from Massachusetts. We would not color our speech.
I have shared.
So this is you're teaching people about.
Yes.
That's really cool. I like that. Have you tried marketing it yet?
Really hard.
No worries. I have it up on ours now, so the chat's there. But you can't really chat if you're on YouTube. You can only chat if you log into the Hangout.
Oh, we have some more people
Not
on.
but they have a university set up to go on the
Welcome.
Hi.
Hey there.
The place.
Must be the place, Tim.
go on the co-op
Right, okay.
Can you take my shoes off?
No, I think
for
we're
10,
okay.
15 weeks.
You can if you want.
Didn't think about it, but and you went to school for 13 years.
Okay.
And then the university, assuming
You probably went to it, didn't think about it. I didn't think about it. Need more carpeting.
the university already had placement, job placement for you to work for 13 years to pay the tuition. This co-op program was very
Amanda.
successful. And
No,
so
okay,
this
Amanda's here.
this guy.
This is Rod.
Great to meet you.
Bachelor degree.
Yes, come on in.
And Mark's around there
And then
someplace.
when the depression struck,
And,
Your name again?
Tim.
he had been employed for 1 year.
Okay, I'm gonna.
And
Any luck with the chat?
He got a job.
Shit. So how come? So what do you see on your screen?
Still alive, but still living in the midst of the depression. So when he insisted that we learn to speak standard English, we take foreign languages in high school.
Can you go to the left of your screen like to pop out like a left side menu.
Weirdly, everybody gets a game board. That's my garden.
Did you follow in the?
I have a bachelor's degree.
Okay, well, I'll just leave it up as is, and once she gets here, I'll stop sharing my screen.
Oh, this is all, because part of what we're about too is people getting.
I also want to like put more things about her on here.
That's
So
the
like,
old fashioned way when I was raised.
And
We had board games.
People stop playing games, they stop
how would
communicating,
you
people stop doing things together, and when you're together, your conversations
Well,
happen.
although
And we're hitting like this,
Okay, so yeah.
we're hoping.
Okay, I'll see you in a bit.
When you initial description, I thought it was something like Sim City.
But you have seeds, so you can start with the seed.
If you're just joining us online, we are still waiting for Dr. Jill to arrive. We have a house full of about a dozen and a half people, and we're just as excited, so I hope you stick with us while she gets here.
Somebody else, you get
So those are the mathematical
And Carl
and if you help somebody.
The first,
Oh, there it is.
the first
Suki will chase them out.
scholarly
Yes.
publication
Sorry.
of Marx's mathematical manuscript is the Moscow edition.
So we should play this tonight.
That came out in
So there
1960.
you go, you can show this out.
And the Moscow edition had over here on the right-hand
We
side,
haven't played a board game in years.
the Russian translation. And on the left, the original deciphered German. Now, the German wasn't pure German. He's writing about the history of calculus. And when Marx wants to talk about the problems of calculus, then he uses the English word. Because he's writing in the British Museum, and his histories of calculus are English language, by a guy named Edward Landon, and there's some French ones, a guy named Bouchard. And this then extensive work, it's some 1,000 pages, was saved from destruction by.
Okay, Dr. Jill is just arriving. I'm going to put you back on
the
camera.
German
You're
Democratic
always
Party,
welcome here with that coffee.
which got it from England. The dog isn't parked.
Off your hands. Are you
Thank you so much,
No, I'm
Amanda.
lucky.
Ted, great
And
to
I'm
meet
Mark.
There we go.
It's
Perfect.
so long.
Yeah, hurry up, buddy.
Starbucks is like 20 minutes.
We got a lot of such.
But Rod Such, yes.
This guy will be
I
thrilled.
know Rod Such.
No, I thought you were gonna make, I thought you meant you already had it here, you were going to make it here. I didn't realize, I would have been so patient had I realized you had to have it in person.
Yeah, I don't even drink like real coffee.
you.
And then I said to the president, speaking in a sentence, I'll be speaking when there's a and the president said, "No, you won't."
And we brought some.
He has perfect right. He's the president, he runs the
I
meeting.
took public
But I'm
transportation.
sorry, I'm not going to for an organization that I see once in a while stand up and say, it's a political group. I'm a politician. And I'm not allowed by the president telling me. Okay. As long as he's president,
You
I'll
have
stay
some
away.
stats car out there. I actually
That's what
thought
happened.
that you were.
And it's pretty straightforward from our
Were you
point of
with
view. I don't have any personal animus toward David Delphi.
Sound like it.
Everyone would agree with it. But to tell me that I cannot
I'm
make an
so
announcement
excited.
every
It's
meeting,
like
I cannot make an announcement cheap. Besides, I can't make an announcement on that particular day.
Oh, you haven't done it before?
No, I haven't.
Oh, see, I've been here 4 years ago that you came.
Oh, so this is all old news
Well,
to
a little bit. I don't
you.
want to see her again. I like her assistant. She was from Kentucky. My family's from Kentucky.
Oh,
So we had something to chat about.
very cool. Well,
Probably a different
she's in
assistant
the
this time.
car
Yeah,
with the door open.
she will eventually emerge. no
She
doubt.
will emerge. She will emerge.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's terrible. Yeah, I can't stand it.
I wanted to explain, Ron, what my campaign of civil disobedience was all about. Why I've been arrested 20 times in the last few weeks.
You?
Why I've been,
He keeps himself
why it was
occupied.
very soon, it turned out that I was incarcerated for 100 days consecutively. And
Yeah, sure.
unable to make that explanation to my political colleagues. I think is an unfair decision from the president.
There's coffee. I should get some. All right. Where's the coffee line at?
Right here.
Right here.
All right.
What time do you have?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna stay till 4:30.
This is a little metal off to some place.
If Jill's time to see. The fourth one. But I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure at this point. I was at a meeting with local.
Oh,
You were told that if you went to this meeting, if you wanted to, Stein might have picked you.
Yeah.
Went to the meeting. Now at 4 o'clock, I was told I performed some other functions.
Yeah, it was probably always a little bit on
If I remember, I should have this house party. So I did it. Come to the house party and carry out my obligations as a local party. But I don't just be here. 15 minutes usually. Half an hour.
But I was in the valley.
Well, on the side there, yeah, it'll be okay. You can block it if you want. There's people keeping an eye.
Yeah.
Hello, greetings. Hey, glad you made it finally.
Welcome.
There she is.
Hello, my name is Amanda. Hello. You too.
Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Yes, I'm glad. Thank you so much. Sure, yeah. Hi. Amanda. Daniel, great to meet you. Welcome. Come on in.
I know, it's just here, right?
Yes, it's quite okay. Thank you.
Okay.
A long time.
Very good. Hello. Hi, I'm Jill. What's your name? Herman. Thanks for being here. Hello. Wayne. Nice to meet you.
Mark, last time you came to our city.
Yeah. Yes, you look very familiar. I feel good to see you again. Thank you for your help.
Man, I'm glad you had the courage to run it for a second.
Believe it or not, it's way easier to say.
Oh, you are down the road.
Oh, yeah, you're not
You don't
kidding.
have the same city lane, though, do you, with you, do you?
No, I don't. Kate is busy in not north
Yeah.
Tennessee. It's just.
So how are you doing this time around?
Not compared to last year, we're just way ahead of the curve.
That's good.
Yeah.
So you're here, what, 3 days in Portland area?
Yeah.
Oregon altogether, 3 days.
Oh, Oregon period, okay.
That's right, yes.
And at least you're being escorted by Seth entirely this time. You don't have to worry about work Friday. Which I remember watching. He was driving all over the place.
I don't even remember that.
Good,
It's all
good.
over.
You don't remember, that's excellent.
All right, to be continued. Hi, I'm Max. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. I'm Megan.
Okay.
Hi, Megan.
That sounds better.
As I understand it, our
You came to the group last week.
Amanda?
Yes. You are. And he doesn't know what I do.
Mahi, how do I spell it?
VAHID. What does it mean? It means unique. In Persian. No, my parents are Baha'is.
Okay. 2016 is what. Interesting.
So are you're behind, no, it's behind different race or same race, just different religion?
It's a religious community. It started in Iran.
So you are Iranian in that sense?
No, I was, my parents are American, European,
Okay, all right.
They converted to the
Father-in-law
I
of
got
the
you.
year.
All right. I was gonna say,
Yeah,
you
is
don't
that
look
what
like
you're getting
Ryan,
elected
so-
as?
No,
For a while?
version there for academic.
No, but that's fascinating.
And Middle Eastern studies.
I like
If anything to introduce Zahid in, is that he's acted in the settlement of Hazelnut Grove.
I don't know anything about Hazelnut Grove, so just.
Oh.
So
Hazelnut Grove is what we've got for progress in the last 4 years toward any accommodation of the homeless in our city.
Oh. Okay,
It is
very
a
good then.
a spontaneous and rapidly developing group that instead of being broken up by police baton, was allowed to exist up to now.
That's very good. I don't know how you accomplished it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
A lot of work, probably.
Yes. Yeah, there's a kid. Yeah, yeah, it's really, really beautiful. Yeah, it's remarkable. Yeah.
But they rescheduled, so I'm still getting together.
No, has Hazelnut Grove, does it have a fiscal sponsor or is it going under a corporation?
Not yet, so we need to work on that.
There's people around, all this, like, how did you get there?
But that's kind of.
It helps to have the caffeine.
It's not level that usually.
Yeah, indeed.
So it's still all everything's informal. We just got a bunch of good developments today. They gave us a bigger fence and they decided to storage in there.
How large is
It's so
it?
exciting.
What's that?
How large is it?
So, the camp, it's about 30 people. Which is, we were kind of the upper limit for an organized camp. Beyond that, it's difficult. It's a consensus-based decision. So
Where's it located?
it's on, with Grady Avenue, right by Interstate, below Overlook Parks. And the Overlook neighborhood.
It's like,
Vaguely.
it's like towards Swan Island.
Yeah.
Oh, you got.
Okay, all right, all right.
Is there other guests allowed?
Yes.
Okay,
And
there's like 30 permanent residents, like,
right, we got a bunch of new space. We can have a guest area,
okay,
so we can do like an R2D2 in there.
awesome.
But I mean, it's.
That's really cool, it's
I'm
really
gonna
cool.
put this on the table, just to avoid this bill.
I just think what's really cool would be like having, like, I mean.
OMG, I'm gonna go ahead and introduce you because you're here.
Oh, yeah, I was just, that's what I'm working on.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do.
You're just saying, cool.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, yeah.
Escorting
I was just realizing that the folks in
This was a
Mark-
fire test.
Portlandia.
Say hello. This is everyone online.
Hi,
Everybody stopped in to hang out with us.
You could be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
My son's in college, so hopefully
Yeah.
my college students will be dropping in my.
Hello. I know I should walk around like this. I'm sorry that you can't enjoy the food,
So if you talk to my son.
right?
Can we sit and watch the smell?
Yeah, or the coffee.
Don't forget the coffee.
Yep. Right? Yum.
Plurality of 43 million young people who are in debt, in college debt, with no way to pay, are basically indentured servants for life. You can actually change this election. You can take over this election. If young people in debt come out to vote to cancel your debt,
Yeah, I mean, the turn of the.
we can win
We
this
can win it.
election on that basis alone. And
Yeah.
that is our first
international peace
priority.
movement, women's movements in Esperanto
If
and veganism.
We have the honor to turn the White House into a greenhouse, which we're gonna
Mhm.
try to
Right,
do.
intersected
Our
with
number
Ohio.
one
Ohio's a part of that.
First,
Liberal.
very first act,
All right,
official act will be to
It's a
cancel
tiny
student
list.
debt,
It's maybe
Yes.
which is long overdue.
less than 100,000.
So spread that word.
Absolutely.
And it's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah, Juan Cole was.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
I know a little about the opposite.
No.
That's part of it.
I'm gonna put you
Yeah,
back
we were
because
both
I'm
actually
nervous I'm gonna
biased,
drop
very active in high
my
school.
laptop. I'm shaking a little bit, still a little starstruck because she's gonna
Writing and publishing.
the changes happen here in the States, and that's really important, and it's great to be part of it. So I'm gonna set you down here so I don't drop anything.
No, the Baha'i
It will be RB.
Yeah, it's a
Oh, that
long
is
story.
It's politics. You can't escape politics.
Can't say politics, yeah. The religious values were nice. I mean, I don't buy it. It's stuff. I'm not a theist, right? But I thought the social values were cool. But then, religious institutions are about power.
As a rule, that's true. Any institution is about power.
Yeah,
Would either of you mind if when she
Yeah.
starts,
Yeah,
we'll
but
put her in one of these spots?
Oh, no, I was scared.
Well, you're good now. You're
I was just holding it for her.
Yeah, I'm keeping an encyclopedia.
You choose whichever one of you want us to make. So we're flexible.
So
This has nice soft velvet.
She might be more comfortable there. What did you
That's also true. You're right. So it's a trade-off.
Come on.
Maybe we should move the
One
chairs
of these
around.
guys.
We do that. We're big, strong.
What if you guys were gonna relinquish
Either
your
of these.
throne?
Relinquish the throne.
I think you need to relinquish that.
Okay.
I do. I'm all the dissertation.
All right, we're gonna set you up.
Actually,
Conversation with Dr. Jill's dad.
Are you going to record this or not?
Yes.
Okay, because I brought my camera case.
Okay. Well, more is good. This is a Google Hangout, and it's broadcasting live on YouTube. And it will be recorded, so we can access it later. You could show people.
I'm all the dissertation.
I'll tell you what, since I brought my camera, I might as well put it to constructive use. I'll get my tripod and bring it in.
I just don't know if the light is
I'm
bad.
not ready.
No, that's what, low
If
camera.
anybody is on Google Hangouts itself,
Yeah.
please let me know that you can see the chat by chatting back to me.
You have no objections to being recorded, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
All right, all right. She's going to record it, and I'll bring my camera and do the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Amanda, where do you want me?
Yes, whichever is more comfortable for you, and then I'll set the camera down.
Okay.
I love it. Reading's a great place.
You don't mind if I?
Oh, please, yeah, absolutely.
Rita's a shit show.
Are you there now?
Freaks.
Yeah, I'm there now.
Okay.
And we also have
Well,
some
now it
slips
has
here.
a former, cop for a president. Maybe attorney general. It's ridiculous. Rita, there's no business having a president. In law enforcement.
Well, I mean,
It's just ridiculous.
Who's the head of?
Going the head of John
President
Kroger.
Kroger,
Also the
he's
head of
former
our community
Attorney
safety.
General of Oregon.
Also our
And he
head
was,
of.
prosecutor, really big anti-mafia, anti-drug prosecutor.
There's also, I mean, he's.
While we're
the head of
waiting to
our-
get started,
Yeah.
I would just love to hear a quick go around of, just like one word, kind of if there's a most compelling issue for you, or
Yeah.
how you happen to come in one sentence or less, and just keep us moving. If Amanda or I do
Where is
this,
it good?
that's this one we're gonna move
Can I
on.
set a tripod right there on top of the table?
Yeah, but while we're getting set up, just remind me your name again, and
Okay.
one
so
thing.
Rod Such and I mainly do Palestine solidarity work.
Fabulous. Needs to be done. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm Fahid Brown, and I
Gathering
do
everyone.
community organizing around housing and homelessness. But I mean, I think the reason I voted for you last time had largely to do with your positions on American foreign policy. So those are issues where I cannot support the Democratic Party and its imperial violence. So thank you for taking those positions.
Thank you for standing up.
Yeah.
Daniel Hall, his, and I, student loan debt. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Number one issue.
Well, I mean, I organize with Strike at Portland.
Oh, great.
Yeah, organizing
Well,
dinners.
we're gonna talk about this.
Oh, cool.
Great. Just a quick go around.
Come on in, we're gonna get started now.
Regular guy, but I like your views.
Okay.
One sentence introduction. What brought us here?
That's okay.
I'm fine.
How's that?
Is it hard to do that for
Oh,
you? And, that caught my eye, and I'm not liberal, I'm radical, so there's not many democratic people I could support.
And soon it will be even more clear about where the party is. So those who are feeling competition, for the progressive agenda from inside the Democratic Party, if you can close your eyes to foreign policy and student debt, in fact, because Bernie advocates for free public higher education, but does not advocate for actually canceling student debt, which is what needs to be done. A few other things you could look at in greater depth too, like school policy and supporting privatization and high stakes testing. That became clear at the passage of the last No Child Behind update. So those are just some of the areas of policy difference. But the Democratic Party is going to make this choice for us. It's pretty clear. So the field is going to narrow substantially in the area of progressive politics. We're doing this,
Okay.
but quick go around.
So I guess my concerns are the intersection or lack of attention. Looking at, I work for the state public health department, so I really look at the connections between public health and the environment.
Yeah.
And see what's happening down in California,
Mhm.
Detroit, Michigan with Flint,
Yeah.
and the lack of holding corporations are doing this stuff accountable.
Right.
And that we're having to pay for their mistakes with our health.
There we go.
I'm also in healthcare. I work in a local hospital, and so I have a lot of concerns about, how people are getting treated by the healthcare system in this country or not treated. And we're both kind of for a long time, we've both been environmentalists, so we're heavily involved with things like issues like Flint and like Porter Ranch, and even in our own neighborhood. So I have questions about, enforcement, things like how can we make the EPA really be the EPA, do what it's supposed to do.
Great. And we'll put that on the agenda, and we'll come back to that. Thank you.
I'm Michael Mayo. I'm the secretary of the Cascadia chapter of the Pacific Green Party of Oregon, and I welcome the possible candidate of the National Green Party for the United States presidency to our town.
Thank you very much. One particular issue on your mind?
I think
or
that
the
I
whole
don't only
nine yards?
speak just for me personally, but for a large number of my colleagues, that the greatest issue in the upcoming election is foreign policy. And that is that we are kind of like Imperial Germany, in that the foreign policy drives the domestic policy. That was what they said back in 1914. That the effort made by our imperial power to crush the various self-driven autonomy groups all around the world, the effort to crush them, the brutality and the militarism involved is now affecting and wiping out any constitutional order that we have within the metropolitan area.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Seb.
Well, the entire platform is important, but I tend to focus on campaign finance reform and election reform, getting big money out of politics, and public records stuff, research, environmental public records.
Great. Critical work. Thank you. Amanda?
I am happy that you're running because I really agree with your policies, specifically surrounding, and I'm sure my husband will attest to this, but the industrialization of hemp. Because I think that if we're really going to get to a clean, renewable, in 2030, we need to get started, and I think that's a good platform for it. Not to mention, just our own friends who are in debt for college, and all the millennials that I'm friends with, they have such a hard time just living because they're, dealing with all of their finance debt. And I think that your plan will definitely support all of them. If they vote, it'll happen.
Awesome. All right, great.
Did we miss anybody that wanted to say something?
Yeah. Well, my biggest issue, and I think it'll spill into every area, but hemp and cannabis can take on big pharma, big oil, wars, the environmental crisis. I think hemp is the key to so many things, and I just sort of want to know where you're going to get started on that issue.
Great. Okay, terrific. So did we get everybody?
Except for me, I'm playing with my camera. But
Okay. Just in a word.
I'm just happy that someone is trying to present an active opposition to the established party. I mean, people need a better option than the two totally controlled and manipulated present parties that we have. And, the Green Party and what you're doing, it makes the best opposition that we have available right now.
Here, here.
That's right.
Thank you. All right.
You know, it's a general statement, but still it's a matter
Yeah.
of principle. And I
Great.
think that's,
I couldn't agree with you more. And, you know, this is something, a revolution is not made by one person, you know, and it's not made in a party which is hostile to the very concept of social and economic justice and peace. So, yeah, this is about actually delivering and building, and not, you know, having a campaign that runs until primary day and then it gets absorbed back into this beast, which is hostile to the basic agenda of that campaign. This is about building, and in the same way that this race now is just far more organized and energized than we have ever been before as Greens. This is it. We're in a very hostile environment to people-powered politics. It's all corporate, you know, propaganda and control. So building, you know, a force to dismantle that and to lift up people power and the agenda that we need, that doesn't happen in a month or in one campaign season. It's about building. You really need to put your feet on the ground and build a political vehicle, and that's what we're doing. And one more.
And somebody arriving.
Yeah.
But I will follow up, and that I listen to a lot of radio, including both sides of the coin, and I've heard this statement, which I tell everyone I can tell, that if you're going to vote this year, please vote this year, don't vote for Democrats and Republicans. You're just wasting your vote. You know, it's worthless to vote for Democrats and Republicans. And to find a third party, I don't necessarily pitch the Green Party because I want them to decide for themselves. I want them to go out and look for a third party, find out the party's values, and stick to that party and vote for that party.
Yeah.
And just ignore the Democrats or Republicans. Now, I'm not alone because I listen to a lot of radio, and noted people on these radio shows say, I'm sick and tired of the Republicrats, you know, and we got to go away from this two-party system and get somebody else involved. So I think this is the year.
It is,
Yeah.
it really is, yes.
It
And
is.
we'll come back to that, because that is really an important backdrop to this whole thing about how incredibly timely this whole thing is. Not only that a lot of forces are coming together to make it possible, but that other things are happening that make it absolutely essential. If we're going to get out of here alive, you know, we really need to start building the alternative in a way that's prepared to take power soon. You know, this isn't hypothetical, this is what we really need to do. And let's see, did you want to say something real quick before we jump in?
you just arrived? You want to say
We're just doing our last.
Yeah.
Oh,
More
thank
food.
you.
Okay, we'll take care of it. You go talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're just doing like a quick minute introduction and to say 2 words about an issue that is leading for you.
Well, my name is Shima, and I'm originally from New York. So now I live in Newburgh, and I was really, really excited to hear about. I never heard about the Green Party candidate, so I'm a little ignorant to that. But thanks to Emma and a lot of my friends that they introduced that party to me, and I mean, I've always been a Democrat for as long as I can remember, like to vote and stuff. So I was a Democrat, but it was like the best of the worst. Like I don't like a lot of things they do, but it's like, okay, it's better than Republican or whatever.
Yeah.
So but yeah, like the number one issue is just our money that we're spending overseas.
Yeah.
And we're not spending it on good cause, like you know, for Africa and for the poor and charity and whatnot. That's fine, but no, we're spending it for genocidal purposes. You know, we're spending it to we're wasting it, not spending it. We're wasting it on you know, funding a fascist state like Israel. We're funding it on wars when we're poor over here, and people don't know that overseas. They think that we're, you know, billionaires here and rich, and that's not true. You know, I'm Middle Eastern, I'm Arab, and I tell them, you know, Americans here struggle. You know, we struggle from so many things, like education. I have to have loans, like tons of loans to pay, and so yeah, that's
great.
The main issue.
Wonderful.
I have a lot more to say, but
yeah. All right.
Thank you, Shima. That's awesome.
And we'll expand on all this, you know. And I wanted to get a sense of the room, and you know, I sort of feel like you've made the case right now, you know, and we could just jump right into how we do this, you know, how do we organize. But for the record, you know, I think it's really good to go over sort of what, how are we putting this together as a campaign? How are we seeing this? What is sort of the strategic opportunity of the moment, and why this is such a, it's a life-changing moment. It's a world-changing moment. It's also sort of a Hail Mary moment. It's like, this is the time to throw that pass, folks, because we're not going to have another chance. That in so many ways we are in a moment of historic crisis right now, historic converging crisis of the economy, of our ecology, of peace and global security, and of democracy. And all these crises are converging in a way which is extremely serious and life-threatening. So we need to change history right now, but history is sort of delivering the potential to do that in a way which is so exciting and thrilling. And we need, a transformative solution, not just little tweaks around the sides, around the margins, little things that we think the power structure is willing to give us. No, we need to stand up and take charge here. And there's very good reason for us to do that. When I say us, I mean a broad coalition for people, planet, and peace over profit. That's sort of the vision in a nutshell. It's sort of the spectrum of justice. Because when you put us together, when you put us together, we have the numbers, we have the power, we have the solutions, we've got the blueprints, or the green prints, as my friend Larry Brahm over there, and Jody Grage, who have just come in, wonderful teammates here. Thank you for being here. We're just sort of jumping into our discussion right now. We've got the ideas, we've got the agenda that has enormous public resonance. And in fact, when you add up the numbers, we've got all the numbers that it takes. And in fact, it's just the propaganda of the political predators. And I think, we need to call them that, because this is a predatory political establishment. It's not neutral. It's created this mess, and it's being rewarded richly for it. And, from their point of view, things are working great. But when you actually add up the numbers of the people who are being crushed, and, the numbers are something like 84% of the world now is living in extremely deep poverty, and it's getting worse. It's not getting better. It's actually getting worse. And in the U.S., we have our own version of that, which is very difficult. We have a different kind of poverty. In some ways, it's not so extreme, but in other ways, it's much more toxic. And we don't have kind of the sense of community and cultural support that more traditional cultures have. So, it's its own unique problem here in the U.S. But when you add up our numbers, we have all the numbers that it takes. And if you look, for example, at young people in debt, young and not so young, because there's a whole lot of people now of growing ages, who are in debt, because the debt cannot be repaid in the economy that we have. And when you add up those numbers now, it's like 43 million and counting who are in this predatory debt, which essentially makes you an indentured servant for the long haul. Why is that? Because we have an economy which is largely temp and part-time jobs. We have now a new record, more temporary jobs now than ever before. 9 out of 10 types of jobs being created don't require a high school degree. This is where the economy has been engineered. This is where we're at. So that debt fundamentally cannot be repaid. So when the word gets out to young people in debt that they can cancel their debt simply by coming out and voting green in 2016, if that word gets out, there's no way we're going to be able to stop 43 million people from coming out to cancel their debt. And no one is more positioned to network and self-mobilize than that younger generation in debt on social media and Facebook, etc. And as that begins to happen, we have this rising tide that's going to build on itself. It's like a tsunami. And that could actually happen. People say to me, are you going to win? And I say, well, I'm not holding my breath, but I'm not ruling it out either, because there actually is a realistic pathway towards winning. And it could be as simple as letting empowering young people to empower each other to know to come out and cancel debt. Because that alone, I have yet to find the young person in debt who learns about that, who doesn't then instantly become, a missionary for this campaign. And it's a self-perpetuating solution, because if you unleash young people in debt to actually become productive members of society again and creative members of society, not just the latest cash cow who's being wrung, you know, for every last cent, which is how the younger generation is being treated. You know, who wouldn't stay home when you've basically been slapped around like that? Young people are basically, you know, exploited on debt, on the skyrocketing cost of education, on the lousy jobs which they've inherited, the lousy economy, and the climate catastrophe. This all falls on the shoulders of young people. Who wouldn't stay home? I mean, why come out and vote when it's just two versions of that predatory future? So, you know, to change the story there, and it was 80% of young people who sat out the last election. In 2014, 80% stayed home, which is not that different from 2/3 of US voters in total who stayed home in the last election. That's why one of our mottos is that the lesser evil paves the way to the greater evil. You will get there, because lesser evilism discourages people from voting. Why come out? People don't get inspired against things. They get inspired for things. So another motto that you may want to pass on to people, you know, is to forget the lesser evil and to stand up and fight for the greater good. Our lives depend on it, now more than ever. And that's basically what our agenda is about. It's an agenda of greater good that actually is workable. And people are blown away to hear this well-kept secret that we can actually solve these problems. And I'll come back to that in a moment. But, you know, I just wanted to stress that the politics of fear that tells you have to silence yourself and just buy into the least worst, you know, it not only makes people stay home, makes them, you know, tune out and tune into something else. You know, it's basically a dead end, but it's false. You know, the politics of fear has delivered everything we were afraid of. All those reasons you were told you had to vote for the lesser evil because you didn't want the massive Wall Street bailouts, you didn't want the offshoring of our jobs, you didn't want another Trans-Pacific Partnership type corporate trade agreement, you didn't want the meltdown of the climate, you didn't want the attack on immigrants, on our civil liberties, on press freedoms, on the massive expansion of drone warfare and the so-called war on terror, which is terror and which creates terror itself. Those were all the reasons people were told they had to do this so-called safe vote. But that safe vote is the most dangerous thing imaginable. That safe vote basically guarantees that we continue down this lethal trajectory. And, you know, of greater student debt, of the privatization of our schools, of high stakes testing, of the school to prison pipeline, of, you know, massive foreclosures and homelessness. That's what we bought into. And issue by issue, you can look at the record of the Obama administration. Even when they had 2 Democratic houses of Congress, that's what they accomplished. And I can give you the numbers on that if you want them. But they basically blew up all the bad things Bush had done. They made him look like a wimp. They massively expanded on that. And they did, you know, on small tweaks around the margins, you could find areas where their policies are less predatory. But in terms of the fundamental economics, our civil liberties, our foreign policy, our economy, and the climate, you know, this is devastation. And another, you know, people often are at a loss for how do you speak to folks who are just kind of like operating on zombie politics. You know, how do you speak to them? Well, another little phrase, which one I was about to give you. Well, you know, one is that the politics of fear has delivered everything we were afraid of. And it has, you know, it's the politics of courage that we need. And another example you can cite there is what happened under Richard Nixon, one of the most, you know, regressive, oppressive, and corrupt presidents ever. We brought the troops home from Vietnam. We really pushed the Supreme Court to provide women the right to choose. We established the EPA, OSHA, and workers' health and safety, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act. There was nothing we couldn't do because we understood that we are our democracy and we have to drive the agenda. and who's in office and what they do. So trading your power, our power of democracy, for this concept that we're going to silence ourselves and expect a corporate political party and a corporate politician to give us little small things here and there, that's just nuts. We cannot trade our fundamental democracy and our mobilization and our intentions to stand up and fight for what we need. That's what's going to win the day. And we need that politics of courage in the voting booth in the same way that we need it out in the street. And, that's what we can do in this incredible, historic, transformative moment that we're in. Let me just say a few words about how we solve this. And that first little, I sort of consider myself a political therapist. I've moved from practicing clinical medicine to practicing political medicine because it's the mother of all evils, or we should say the mother of all illnesses, politics, that is. And we've got to cure our political illness in order to cure all the other things that are literally killing us. And in addition, I sort of think of my role as helping people. I mean, we all have to play this role, I think, of political therapist, and helping our friends and colleagues find their political power. It's like helping a friend break up with an abusive relationship. It's like breaking up with the Democratic Party. It's like you just have to get back in touch. That you deserve better. You shouldn't be making excuses for your abuser.
Exactly.
And you'll find people do that over and over. So it's about empowering each other to tap into our power and our right to have a world that actually works for us. An America that works for all of us and a world that works for all of us. And I better grab a cup of water from someone before I talk myself hoarse here at the very beginning. Thank you. So I'm just going to name, so that's just sort of like a dose of political therapy for us all to chew on, to recognize that we have the numbers. And let me just quote some numbers for you. 50% of people in the latest Wall Street Journal poll, which was done at the end of the summer, thank you.
That's good Portland water.
All right, no, can't beat it, thank you.
Should have brought my stuff.
Keep it that way. 50%, thank you, of American voters now have basically divorced the Democratic and Republican parties. And in fact, disapproval rates are majority. Majorities disapprove, that is, have unfavorable views of both Democrats and Republicans. So it's 50% now who do not regard themselves as Democrat or Republican. And it's 21% who identify as Republicans. And it is 29% that regard themselves as Democrats. So remember, you're in a really good position to start with. Don't let them talk you into a defensive mindset where you think that, oh, we're just some marginal fringe group. And I have to tell you one other just quick anecdote to drive this home. The first time I was tricked into running for office, which was in 2000, preparing for the 2002 election, running as governor in Massachusetts, I was tricked into running, thinking that it would just be, just do what you're doing, as an environmental health advocate. It became more complicated than that, but it got more fun as it went along once you get tricked into doing it, which is something no one in their right mind would want to do. But once you are forced or tricked, it definitely has a lot of redeeming value, and it can be very, very fun if you're doing it with integrity and you're really doing it to build the movement. It's a no-lose proposition. It really is. And so anyhow, we fought our way into a debate, and this was a televised gubernatorial debate with Mitt Romney and a few other notables, the treasurer of the state as well, who was running as a Democrat, and a libertarian, and one other person. So we had a televised debate because the mobs were just coming out and saying, no, this is absurd. We need an open debate. So we called out such a loud and boisterous crowd that they finally agreed to let us into a debate. And in that debate, I articulated the basic green agenda for people, planet, and peace over profit. And it was treated like it was the lunatic fringe in that discussion. And inside the debate hall, those ideas went over like a lead balloon. This was like in the TV studio, okay? So it's just candidates and moderator. And when we walked out from the debate, I was mobbed by the press, who told me that I had won the debate on the instant online viewer poll. And it was like suddenly, you know, the light went off in my head, and I realized the way that we think, and part of what we were doing, we were arguing against high stakes testing and saying that, no, we need to teach to the whole student for lifetime learning. We need, you know, we need schools that are about education, that are about music and recreation and arts and community engagement and stuff like that. And healthcare is a human right, and, you know, the usual agenda. And, you know, lo and behold, it wasn't the lunatic fringe. It was like what most people wanted even back in 2002 when things weren't nearly as difficult and really desperate as they are today. So, you know, that was just, that was the beginning of my awakening that, no, this is not futile, that they are just working overtime to try to convince us that we are powerless, because they are quaking in their boots at how powerful we are the minute we get together and we push forward. The minute we recognize our power. Alice Walker has this great quote about how the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we had it to start with. But once you recognize that we have it and you flick that switch from powerless to powerful, and we start acting on it, you know, this is a transformative moment. And the critical issue is to go outside of the circles. So many of us activists, you know, are coming from relatively privileged and educated backgrounds. So we think everybody thinks like our demographic, you know, but in fact, most people who are struggling, the average worker's wages right now is barely above poverty. 40% of workers are making $20,000 a year or less. You know, household wealth has collapsed by 40%. You know, cost of healthcare has doubled for workers over the last 5 years with this great Affordable Care Act, which is not affordable and not particularly caring either. So there's a lot of momentum and support out there, and it's all about being strategic about who do we talk to and the networks that we go out and support and work to mobilize. So, you know, it's a whole new world out there, and I'm just going to run through a couple things that we talk about. One is a Green New Deal, which is a win-win solution. It is an emergency program modeled on the New Deal that got us out of the Great Depression. So it's not like rocket science. This is, you know, this is pretty straightforward. It's an emergency program to create 20 million jobs that put people back to work in greening the economy, our energy, our food, and our transportation system, building the essential infrastructure and rebuilding the infrastructure, like the pipes that are deteriorating in Flint. All over the country, those pipes are deteriorating. So it's you know, it's recreating that infrastructure and also restoring ecosystems, which are also really, really critical. And we also call for meeting human needs. So it's a broad agenda, but with $20 million, you can do a lot of stuff. And it, in one fell swoop, so it targets 100% clean renewable energy by 2030, which is in time to actually fix the problem. So it revives the economy while it turns the tide on climate change, and it makes wars for oil obsolete. That's the other critical thing here. That it's not the economy against the environment and war is like its own, you know, immutable force. No, we fix all these things together. In fact, you can't fix them one at a time, which is part of where we depart from Bernie. You know, that Bernie thinks we can sort of stay the course on the war machine because it brings lots of jobs. Well, those are the wrong jobs. And in fact, we got those jobs, you know, we converted the economy in 6 months in World War II. When Pearl Harbor was bombed, it took us 6 months to massively convert the economy. And that was after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Well, the bombing of Pearl Harbor, as terrible as it was, is nothing. It doesn't hold a candle to the massive destruction of climate change. And that's here right now, and it's also not that far away when we look at 10 or 20 feet of sea level rise, which is now predicted for within a couple of decades, unless we dramatically change course, we're going to see massive sea level rise and basically the obliteration of all harbors all around the world. This isn't just Pearl Harbor, this is all harbors, and the billions of people who basically live in proximity to coastlines. This is the absolute destruction of all, life supporting infrastructure and our major population centers around the world. Add to that, we have, the extinctions. We're in the midst of this sixth great extinction. And if you want to survive a great extinction, you need to be smaller than a squirrel, because mammals otherwise don't make it. So, there are reasons why we really need to fix this now, and why we can transform our economy, and moving from the war and fossil fuel economy to the green, sustainable economy is critical, and it can be done. It can actually be done within 15 years. If we could do 25% of the GDP in 6 months, you can be sure that we can transform the entire economy in 15 years. What we need really is, we need leadership. We need a political narrative that actually empowers us to do the right thing. Because right now they're playing off jobs against climate and the environment as if you have to choose one or the other. And in fact, they can only survive if we're doing all of them together. And the benefit is that we don't need the friggin' wars for oil then, which have, what have they accomplished? Well, $6 trillion is what we've spent over the last, 14 years on these three major wars. $6 trillion turns out to be $75,000 per household that we will have put into these wars by the time their bills are paid. $75,000 a household. Is that a tax that anybody feels good about? I doubt it. Killed 1 million people in Iraq alone, let alone killed and maimed tens of thousands of US soldiers. And what has it gotten us? Failed states, massively increased terrorist threats, and unbelievable mass refugee migrations, which are really threatening the core of Europe and many other societies around the world. This is absolutely unsustainable. That's why, in many ways, it's not just throwing away your vote to vote more of the same. We cannot go down this road. So it's not just a thrown away vote. It's a vote of self-destruction. Don't use your vote as a weapon against yourself. Use your vote to push us forward in the way that independent politics has always pushed us forward. Independent third parties have always been a critical part of pushing the system forward. And when third parties were silenced, starting actually around the time of the New Deal, when there was a New Deal coalition and third parties sort of joined that coalition in the Democratic Party, and we lost the push of third parties, that's when forward progress stopped and we began to basically backslide. So in my view, standing up and voting a vote of courage and a vote which has a real agenda really pushes us forward. It moves us forward in a very concrete way. And it moves us forward in a way that if we don't have it, we can be sure that we're going to continue backsliding. And we are, it's not like back against the wall. It's like back over the cliff right now. We're in a free fall. And we got to move fast to get out of that free fall. And we have all the makings of doing that. And the Green New Deal is one part of how we don't just survive, we can actually thrive. And it changes, sort of the context and the basic values so that they're founded on democracy, justice, and human rights. Those become sort of the core of what we're doing under the Green New Deal. I want to mention student debt. We can cancel student debt. It's really critical, not only to solve that problem of debt, but to bring back a generation that's been sort of put out to pasture, prematurely. This is about re-engaging young people, because without that vision and the energy of the younger generation, we don't move forward. That's who it is that transforms society. And we need that energy. All of us badly need it, or we're going to be stuck. That's why canceling student debt is the first priority of our administration. If we have the honor of serving, our first priority is to cancel that debt so that we can liberate that generation to get back involved and become part of society. Once you've canceled debt, then young people can be involved. But right now they're too busy working 3 jobs, 3 part-time minimum wage jobs, and just trying to keep a roof over their head, let alone even pay back their debt. So that's a critical solution. I want to mention also free public higher education, which goes along with canceling the debt. These things pay for themselves, by the way. We know that public higher ed returns $7 for every dollar that we put in as taxpayers, and it's the right thing to do. We provided high school education throughout the 20th century because it was essential for economic security. And in the 21st century, you need that college degree. So by right, it should be provided. We call for healthcare as a human right under Medicare for All, which also pays for itself. These are like basically zero cost investments. It's about taking the money away from the predators and ensuring that we have a streamlined, simplified system, insurance system that takes the bureaucracy out and puts the healthcare back in. On public education, I just want to mention that we need to revive public education. We've sort of replaced it with this privatization model, which is essentially test, punish, and privatize, and to bash teachers while you're at it and blame them for all the problems of poverty. So this is nonsense, and it needs to be stopped. And it's been really carried forward again by the Democrats, who've been leading the charge on the privatization of our schools, and also the use of high stakes testing. So we're calling for fully funding our schools, for basically reinvigorating public education, for doing away with high stakes testing. Fine to use some tests for diagnostic purposes, but not for, the high stakes, make it or break it. There's no place for that. It's completely disproven by existing data, let alone what we had before. We never should have gone there. Now there's even more reason to come back from that. And we need to ensure that young people come to school ready to learn, that they are housed, that they are clothed, that they are healthy, and they are well nourished. So that would go a long way to enabling kids to learn, because when they're coming to school, breathing pollution, walking through gunfire, coming out of homeless shelters, living in incredible, unstable situations. And 50% of kids in public schools now are in poverty. It's absolutely shocking. When 50% of kids are in poverty, there's just no way they are coming to school ready to be educated. That covers the highlights. I'll also just mention a national action plan for racial justice. We can solve this issue of police violence, and we can solve it now. This is not rocket science. We can ensure that there are citizen review boards, and that there are investigators, that there are attorneys who are ready and empowered. You don't need, an act of the White House in order to have an investigation. You should be able to just have investigators at the ready, so that people are held accountable when they commit, murder and violence, and all deaths should be investigated. All deaths that take place in police custody. So there are ways to deal with this, and we need to deal with the inherent racism in the economy as well, and in housing and healthcare, and in hiring. The unemployment rates are twice as high in communities of color. So these are fixable problems, and there is a way forward here, which is really exciting, which can get the job done. We have the numbers, we have the solutions. By ending these wars for oil, we also bring back an enormous amount of resources into our economy, so that we can do what we need. And I should mention one last factoid, and that's the Green New Deal. Because we get so much healthier when we're not breathing that pollution, and not, it's not in our water supply, and the mercury isn't working its way up the fish food chain and all that. We get so much healthier, less cancer, less heart disease, less asthma, less emphysema. It actually pays the cost of the transition in relatively short order. So the Green New Deal actually pays for itself, even before you factor in ending the wars for oil. So this is an economic, bonanza in the making. So this is all good stuff. The missing link in all this is about our standing up and pushing forward. And I'll just say a word about the campaign, because it is unbelievably exciting to see all this happening now, to compare it with where we were 4 years ago, and to see how far we've come. partly that we've been proven right, on our agenda. Really on all the issues, we've been ahead of the curve, and the curve's caught up to us. So we have a whole lot of credibility going into this. We have a lot of attention from the press. We were on CNN. I was on CNN Morning News on Saturday, just this past week, which was a big breakthrough. We've been getting a lot of attention from the progressive press. There is kind of this big focus on Bernie right now, and that's going to run its course. He'll probably win New Hampshire, but America is not New Hampshire, and Hillary has her lead, and at some point the Democratic Party is going to take out its big guns. For Howard Dean, you remember that was the Dean scream. For Jesse Jackson, it was that he was anti-Semitic, anti-Israel. So there's a big smear campaign against him about that. So they will find some very clever and devious way to bring him down. They're already busy scooping up the super delegates. Super Tuesday will be very stressful if you're not a big corporate campaign and you don't have your super PACs to get you through that. So I think that's going to run its course. The Democratic Party has long since been sold out, and it's run by predatory banks, fossil fuel giants, and war profiteers. They're not about to give it up right now. They're pretty entrenched. So they're going to do their thing. And our job, I think, is to just lift up our real way forward as loud and strong as we can, and lay the groundwork for that big shift. When Bernie's campaign folds into Hillary's, there's going to be a lot of people looking for a place to go with integrity. And I think the number one priority is getting the word out to young people and on campuses, because that alone is enough to win the election right there. If we did nothing but organize among people in debt, not just that you get to renegotiate your debt, but that we can wipe that debt out starting in November of 2016. We can actually do that. So I want to just give you a big thank you for seeing the way forward. And if you have those little forms, I'll mention it now because otherwise we'll get lost in the shuffle, that we have qualified for matching funds, which is historic. Thank you for your help, for getting us there. So everything you contribute now, up to 250. If you are in a position to contribute more than 250, you can do that. You never know who in the room might have deep pockets. You never know. The legal limit is actually $5,500. I just say that for the record. But a contribution of any amount is wonderful and is life-saving. And we have literally thousands of volunteers who've signed up on our website now. And we are just now starting to flesh out the campaign so we can do the hiring. And we can start doing this outreach to so many communities who have been locked out, whether it's young people or, workers. The unions, may be slow to move. They're not going to be the first ones to come around, but there are a lot of rank and file people out there that deserve a whole lot more. The homeless,
I'm just looking at this.
immigrants. There are 25 million Latinos who've learned, and these are Latinos who vote, in addition to 12 million undocumented Americans who are Latino. They have learned that Democrats are the party of deportation, while the Republicans are the party of hate and fear-mongering and smearing. So they're looking for a place to go. So, and we have basically people who are ready to just beat a path to our door and do organizing, but we need a staff to help support a real ground game. So your dollars will be put to very good work. They will be doubled. You can contribute online. You can also contribute by check. We're a fully compliant, FEC compliant campaign for the matching funds. So we have a little form there that asks who your employer is and what your occupation is. That's all just for FEC reporting, so they can track when the big, gorillas are taking over the funding. We can see it. That's not a problem we have to worry about. If you are a lobbyist or a CEO of a for-profit corporation, and there are some good corporations out there, like, green energy corporations, et cetera. But to be above board, we don't take money from anyone who hires a lobbyist. Any for-profit corporation that hires a lobbyist, we just don't take the money so that there are no strings attached.
Yeah.
Whether they're good strings or bad strings, we just don't believe in political strings. So that's how it works for us. So I want to just give you a big thank you for being here and being, being the leading edge, for leading the charge to a world that works for all of us, that puts people, planet, and peace over profit, because our lives depend on it and our time has come.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I think I do. So,
We have some questions from people who are watching online, if we can just establish those. So the first one comes from Millie Diaz in Hollywood, Florida.
okay, great.
During your 2012 presidential run, you pulled in a total of 469,501 votes, which was amazing, but not enough to win. I certainly feel you are the best candidate and would really like to see you take office. What are you doing differently this time around to affect the people's vote to win?
Awesome. Great question. So let me say that this time around, for one thing, we have much better coverage. So we're getting more coverage in the progressive press, and even the not so progressive press. We did CNN the other day. And we're also better organized so that we're using social media. And if you go to Dr. Jill Stein, and that's Dr. No period, Dr. Jill Stein on Facebook. Get on Facebook, because that's where it's really happening and where the word spreads. So we have a very big Facebook following now, and that's where a lot of the action is. So it's social media, and it's grassroots organizing, and it's a guerrilla campaign. We have held off the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a whole other story that I won't say a lot about, except that this is a really terrible trade deal, which basically betrays the whole concept of democracy, because it allows a court to overrule our laws and our regulations. So it basically destroys our ability to make laws. What is a democracy supposed to do? And that Trans-Pacific Partnership is being moved ahead. So anyhow, we have, as a grassroots movement, we have stopped the TPP. It was supposed to have been passed at least a year ago. We have stopped it, and stay tuned, by the way, because we'll be helping to organize actions around the country in February. President Obama is about to sign the TPP, but that does not make it law. So it makes it really critical when he signs it on February 4th that we are going to start undertaking grassroots actions. And I want to give a big shout out for Portland and all the amazing direct actions that you have taken to stop all these terrible fossil fuel facilities. Yes, it's worth barking about it. So stay tuned. We'll be getting word out. We also have some legal cases. We are suing the debate commission to try to open up the debates, because when we're here, when we're heard, we win. So we're going to be fighting to get into the debates and really empower voters. Because remember, the majority of voters now is not a Democrat or a Republican. It's an independent. So independents deserve to hear other candidates besides the minority Democratic and Republican candidates.
That's non-affiliated voters.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Non-affiliated. Many words for it, but say non-Democrat and non-Republican.
Right.
And some of them are affiliated with things like the Green Party or the Socialist parties and things like that. But it's 50%. That's like half of voters are non-Democrat, non-Republican. So we're fighting to get into the debates, and we will be helping to organize direct actions to make it clear that our democracy is not optional. It's really essential. So get ready, go to our website and sign up and stay tuned. So we'll be getting the word out, And soon we will have organizers to help you get the word out. We really want to help campuses set up chapters and give you the tools you can use, flyers and websites and so on, so that you can be leading the charge, really, to rescue the future, not only for the younger generation, but for all of us who are really depending on you.
Another question here is, does Canada's election of Justin Trudeau as a new Prime Minister inspire your Power to the People plan? And if so, how?
Let's see. Well, let me say it's complicated. It's a mixed bag, and there's some things Justin Trudeau is doing and some things he's not doing. We definitely, you know, there were some good candidates who got locked out in the Canadian election because people were trying to consolidate around, I think, a candidate that they thought could win. And what we're trying to do is really encourage people to stand up and not be intimidated by this lesser evil idea, because the lesser evil, as we've seen, paves the way to the greater evil, that we have to stand up for what we deserve. And we need to forget the lesser evil and fight for the greater good, because we've had this lesser evil thing going on for too long. And with that in mind, there is an agenda for jobs, for ending student debt, for fixing the climate crisis, for healthcare as a human right, for free public higher education. We deserve nothing less, and we can actually afford this now. So you're right, it is a Power to the People plan, and we're a Power to the People campaign, and that's truly where the power is. So join us and make it so.
Any other questions from the room?
When you mentioned that we're going to try and be in the presidential debates, we know what happened there. They formed a corporation, and now it's in the hands of a corporation. We already knew they were in the hands of a corporation, but now they really are in the hands of a corporation for these presidential debates. So other than to start a lawsuit, is there a way in?
The corporation, well, they're called the Commission on Presidential Debates.
Right.
And they're a corporation that's run by the Democratic and Republican parties. So it's like an outrageous concept that these two parties that represent 21 and 29% of the vote, they get to wipe out all other options. What we're calling for is for candidates who have the support base to be on the ballot for the majority of voters. We were on the ballot for almost 85% of voters in the last election. That if you're on the ballot in enough states that you can actually win the election, voters deserve to know about you. Voters have not only a right to vote, but they also have a right to know who they can vote for and to know about those candidates. Now, some people say, oh, if you open the floodgates, you know, you're going to have so many hundreds of candidates, you can't conduct a debate. But if you use that criteria, that you will be admitted to the debate if you're on the ballot for enough voters that you could actually win the election, we would have 4 candidates in the debate. And over the last many years, we basically would have had 4 to 5 at most candidates. So that would create a real, you know, a dynamic election, which would have a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, and a Green, basically. So you'd really have a spectrum instead of this very centrist, corporatist point of view that differs on social issues, but is, you know, really on the same plate when it comes to war, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to, you know, wiping out workers' rights and privatizing our education and our healthcare system and so on. So it's a problem that can be fixed. How did we fight our way into the debates, you know, in 2002? Actually, we had huge demonstrations. We had huge demonstrations that just kind of went viral. And there were so many people who turned out that they just couldn't stop it. And when you think about social change, huge demonstrations is often the way that it happens, especially if there are moms and babies involved, because that tends to stay the hand of the fascist state. So East Berlin, when they were confronted with these massive demonstrations, they called out the troops, but the troops wouldn't fire because it was moms and babies there too. So, if you look at what just happened in Guatemala, where they basically, imprisoned their president, who had been a part of the, the death squad, that happened based on huge demonstrations as well. So there are several models of peaceful transition, and I think above all, we need a huge demonstration on voting day inside the voting booth, and we all need to exercise massive, direct action in the voting booth by going out and defying the political predators and voting on our behalf for a future that works for all of us.
Daniel?
Yeah, I have two questions. But
Sure.
I guess my first one is like, what happened to the 2002 race? Did you win? Or
Oh, in that race?
yeah.
Well, what happened was once we won the debate, they took us out of the debate because it became clear that we were very, that my campaign was a real present danger to them. So they took us out of the debate and, sort of totally silenced all knowledge of the campaign. We wound up winning, hundreds of thousands of votes, but they slammed us. And we went to court. The court was, brain dead. They didn't get it. But we established a base from which we continue to build. And, we had a city councilor for many years in Boston, the Boston City Council, who was green. And, it's a struggle, but it's a struggle in which we become much more powerful. In 2002, we were really ahead of the curve on green energy, on conflict resolution, on high stakes testing, on gay marriage. There were just so many things where the Greens have been ahead, and we keep being, validated on issue after issue. So as people become more and more, alerted and mobilized that this predatory corporate political system and economy it's a death sentence. We've basically built it, and they're coming.
Mitt Romney won.
Oh right. Okay. Yes. My second question was, what is the campaign strategy to reach out to Latino and voters of color and communities who speak a language other than English?
Great. We are very well networked with these communities, and now what we need to start doing is hiring on staff to help support their outreach. And I don't know if you know the Black Agenda Report. It's a really dynamite. Does that ring bells for people?
Yeah, it rings my bell.
What's that?
It rings my bell.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very awesome, African American perspective on politics. And one of the lead editors for the Black Agenda Report is one of our deputy campaign managers, who is just, in fact, we are hoping to tackle North Carolina and Georgia. Georgia in particular has the largest African American population in the US. And it also has the most regressive and restrictive ballot access rules. So it's very hard for an independent third party to offer an option there, but we are undertaking Georgia and North Carolina as we speak. So we have these huge ballot drives ahead of us. And in the process of doing those ballot drives, we're actually working with frontline communities to be a part of that and to help lead the charge. And we need to be able to support them in doing that. So that's a lot of what our current, fundraising is for, so that we can actually do these hires to support the work in those communities. Likewise, we're very networked with the Latino community and have in our campaign leadership from that community. And there are others who really want to expand. Some of the biggest online organizing that's gone on in the Latino community would like to be involved with our campaign. And it takes resources to do that.
And a lot of the Asian Pacific Islander community, like
yes,
connected to them too.
Increasingly, yes. And this is another hire that we're about to make. So yeah, we're absolutely looking to do that as well, and to really, continue building as a really diverse campaign that lifts up these frontline struggles into the front lines of presidential dialogue and debate. Because we shouldn't just be talking about Hillary's, emails. We really need to be talking about Black Lives Matter and Asian Lives Matter and ending the deportations and providing refugee status and creating a path to citizenship for the undocumented who are really the backbone of our community. So, we've taken positions that the communities are very excited about. I spoke at the biggest rally, actually, that I think a School of the Americas Watch. Are you familiar with School of the Americas Watch? Yes, in Georgia. I spoke at one of their rallies, which was really interesting. I mean, School of the Americas, at a time that immigrants are being bashed, they held the largest rally that they've ever held on behalf of immigrant rights. It just shows you how false and manipulative our political dialogue is. It's really been making immigrant bashing look like it's the norm, but it's really not. It's important to remember when Donald Trump is winning, had like a third of the Republican vote. Remember, that's a third of 21%, which is 7%. And the media lifts it up like it's the dominant American paradigm. It is not the dominant American paradigm. It's not by any means. And by fanning the flames, you just encourage the pathology. And there's a lot of pathology out there. There is. But there's also a lot of just, where does fascism come from? Often fascism is a reaction of poor and desperate people whose hopes and dreams have been thwarted, and that's where kind of America is right now. So we definitely have the potential to go fascist big time. But we also have the potential not to go fascist by really adopting a progressive and humanistic agenda. And we have to stand up for that unapologetically, loud and clear, and we will move in that direction. But when you have the media that just wants to, create this ridiculous, disgusting public dialogue, which is not dialogue, it's just fear campaigning, smear campaigning. That's really horrible. And our media needs to be liberated, as much as anything else. We need to take back the public airwaves and break up these big corporate monopolies that have destroyed our media. And that can be done. That can be done. I mean, all of this can be solved. There are solutions for all of this. And that's why, to my mind, the name of the game is about our getting together and being that coalition for people, planet, and peace. Because the minute we do that, we have the numbers and we have the vision and we are unstoppable.
There's one more question online. Every day, people are dying of cancer and other diseases that cannabis has been shown to cure. How will you take on big pharma and a multi-billion cancer treatment industry that doesn't want to let go of the gravy train? How will healthcare change?
Yes. So, that same question can be asked about everything, from healthcare to jobs to trade. There are predatory industries that have locked us in where we are, and that's why it's so important that we have a coalition for the rest of us, so that we have policy that's actually driven by the public interest. But in terms of specifically, thank you guys. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Take care. And we'll be wrapping up soon. There are great ways to fix this. So for one, we need to actually use science when we're making scientific decisions. So the minute we use science,
Wait a minute.
the minute you use science when you're talking about listed drugs, regulated substances, then marijuana and hemp come off that list of regulated substances. So then we can begin to actually investigate the true medical potential of these very important, therapeutic substances. And that means not only for their medical uses, but for hemp, there are all kinds of economic uses as well. So this is a whole area of health as well as a whole area of economic development, and it's grassroots economic development as opposed to like the corporate, because there's a whole corporate thing here which is trying to monopolize the new hemp and marijuana economies. And only make it so that corporations can grow marijuana. So that's not a solution either. We need a solution for everyday people and for the grassroots economy, and that's entirely doable. And that is, part of this agenda that we're moving forward. And if we can mobilize the cannabis community to get out and vote as well,
There's another one.
that's another very big player here that can assure that we can actually win the day on this. All right, great. So let me just give you all a big thank you. I don't know if we had a sign-up list here. Did you guys do a sign-up list
Yeah, I
or
was
something?
wondering about that too.
Yeah, if you
We'll get
haven't,
one going.
yeah,
You can
We'll do
just
it.
add us from our form.
yes, if you submitted a form, we've got your info. If you didn't
If you
submit
did
a form,
Facebook,
just,
we've got it too.
Yeah.
okay, great, because it's all about
Thank you
being
so much,
organized.
and thanks for
Thank you
hosting.
so
Oh,
much.
please come with some goodie bags. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for
Bye,
coming.
Max. Bye, Marcus.
Thanks. Great. And we just have to do a time
Is that-
check.
It is 5:46.
Okay, all right, good.
We have a little bit of time.
Does anybody have another form filled out? Or does anybody need a form?
This is Suki.
There's a lot of coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing. There's a lot of Americans.
That's how you get
A lot of us here.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the meaning of that little cryptic comment. I don't have any money left to give this time. I'm spending it on my That's something personal. Here it is. Underneath. You want to go this way? Is that what you're asking? Okay, go ahead.
Awesome.
It was awesome.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Good talking with you.
It was great
Okay, so
talking
you
to
have
you. Yeah, you're like really the only candidate that I follow.
No kidding, wow.
That I follow consistently. And it's just hard because I get a lot of pressure.
Thank you.
Pressure to do my own careers.
No, I'm not finished. I'm done. I'm finished. I'm done.
Because there's a
Wow.
group.
Yeah.
No, it's just for me, I think it's hard.
Yes,
because
yes, I know that one. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I want to know. I
Yes, I
myself,
do.
like, personally, how to be more intentional about
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I think certainly. I don't know. Certainly, if Hillary gets nominated, then I'll just-
You can cut on her. She loves that.
I
This
don't know,
was
it'll
a
be
mix
little
of
hard. It'll-
border collie
I
and
know
German
we risk
shepherd.
it. I know I'm gonna face more.
I always thought she had Colin with her too,
Yes.
but it didn't come up on a
It's so
song.
unlike
But the German Shepherd dog
I mean,
came out.
the
Yes,
Democrats
it's
have
got a
to
little bit of that. Chow.
for decades.
I just see her throwing up a hammer and sickle on her TV when she's
Thanks a lot for hosting.
Hey, it's a real pleasure.
Oh,
They're gonna use that.
And they'll put it in a fancy glossy
I
ad.
said, look here, we're in the real world. Israel's not going to.
Yeah.
Is TV ads in?
We're simply asking
Has
justice for
just
Palestinians. And that's not a negative,
Oh,
I'd like to
let's
point out,
see.
that's
We've
a
done
positive.
some ads,
And
but
the
you
issue
know,
of
not
justice for
on
Palestinians is something that's kind of
So that
non-negotiable
won't
for the
happen.
entire
But
Green Party.
we don't
But
need
nobody in the
No,
Green
I don't
Party,
think, it's a very, it's like
Nobody else is
artificial.
calling
Yeah.
to dissolve the
It's
union.
like.
No, we don't want to
It's-
talk to generations that don't have
asphalt.
anything. Our
It's a-
demographic,
just a
you know, is not
completely
sitting
unrealistic
today.
kind
You know,
of
our
approach
demographic is
policy.
always.
Take a state and say,
So-
let's
Or
go back.
Yes,
to
yeah.
the state one.
Yeah.
The state.
I was
It's not
thinking,
existing.
right.
You know, you have to recognize, you can do it on the side. Or whatever. You recognize it exists. You get a group of people on that, invite them on Facebook and do a Q&A.
Yeah.
That could be very
So that's what the,
successful. And that
build-up
does not
was.
cross the
My friend, I heard that I used the wrong.
Yeah.
It was very easy to set up.
No, that's really great.
Yeah, I'm not sure yet. I'll have to check and see how the bulletin board actually plugged in.
And this is on this collaborative.
Yes, no, not WordPress, it was on the CC.
Or was it-
It's not, no.
Whether or not we should abolish this.
Low key.
I just wanted the
We are
CC to
only
be aware
getting to launch.
that I was telling this guy.
It was to the other guy, primarily.
Okay.
Usually what happens is you go a separate email list for all Middle East
Way too recherché. The rest of us are going in
We're
there.
trying to like the big business, and then the joke comes out of nowhere. It was not my
You will challenge them. And if you are informed, because, you know, it's so terrible.
Seth is as long a party worker as I. He has his own chapter.
And they're gonna be.
No, exactly.
They're gonna
I'm
be
already
dropping
telling.
out because they're so pissed off.
I'm already telling them like
Yeah,
I'm still
right.
This might be the right way.
Take like 5.
right? It's insulting for you to tell me to feel the burn because I'm feeling burned already. Like I'm feeling burned. Yeah.
Military industrial complex.
Thank you so much. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
mean, we did bailouts. I can
Maybe there's
places they're still bailing them out. Wow.
They still are.
Well, but I have creditors calling me daily because I got all those the other time.
Yes, I am. I just can't believe I went.
All my assets are
This might be a little better.
Be more sensitive. You're the boring.
Lightsabers behind
A
you.
little silly standing here smiling on me.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, hopefully it won't. Thank you so much.
Well, what we were doing was like, if you needed your number.
Yeah.
You couldn't buy the Bitcoin, you would buy it with us, we buy it with our credit card. send it to you.
By the way, when I got here,
Right.
So the market can't be right out here. Individual persons. Basically, you close the assets. It's holding $10,000. So they're like,
Yeah.
Can I do anonymous cash?
Yes, you can. Let's see, if you fill out a form.
I did fill out a form with cash. Is that okay?
Yes, yes, right. If you fill out, give me a form. What's that? Okay.
I'm probably on your list.
Well, I know.
All right. Yeah, all right. I think we can.
I am the CEO of a large corporation, but it's just me.
Yeah.
You went to the Facebook
But
page.
you don't have no worries. You don't have a bias, you don't have an attitude. What's your line?
Somewhere else. When's your event? When's your event? So you have another one.
Yeah,
When you donate, you have to
yeah.
sign your name.
Yeah, we're doing
And
the,
people who are interested in staying up to date. And then we can.
Oh,
yeah.
I can't wait, so I didn't want to ask too many questions because I didn't know what you wanted to cover.
Yeah, sure, yeah, we'll come to that one.
Yeah, I might.
It should be interesting.
Yeah, cool. You know, never that county on.
Oh, good. What's his last name? Okay. Is he on the panel?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know too much about that, so I guess I'll find out.
Hi, Chris.
Chris.
Larry, nice to meet you.
Nice
Yeah.
to meet you.
So, while that you were talking about this, one thing that in particular just interested me, like, which is, and I don't hear a whole lot talk about it. Right? So it's like just recovering the whole civil discourse. You know, just really trying to figure out a way to avoid just this inane sense of, like you're talking about, where it's like
That video?
it's almost like, you know, demoralizing. Can we even begin to like creatively, civilly, you know what I mean, rather than all this. Just, that's the part that's disheartening. That's so discouraging, you know, because you think, does anybody care about it?
Well, you almost think that they do this on purpose because as far as they're concerned, it feels like
I know.
yeah.
Yes.
Serving the few and the powerful, it's their benefit to,
Michael.
you know,
Yeah,
to
Michael Howe.
It's effective. Just because after a while, I heard some years ago, it was an interview with, I think it was Rachel Maddow was interviewing John Stewart. And he talked about, it was probably the best treatment of this thing. He says, listen, the way that the dialogue goes now is, he says, somewhere with the advent of 24-hour news, all the producers and networks, figured out that the only way to capture and maintain, that people's attention was to take every major news story and dumb it down to a binary. Like a rugby, like when you look at something, you have a half a second to figure out which team, are you red or blue? Like, is that my team or, where's my, and then, okay, I know where I'm at. And that's it. It's, and that kind of binary, red, blue, black, right? All of them. And you just run down the line. What is it? A is B is A is straight. And it's only binary. So you only get to choose between, oh, that's right. I'm on this side, over against the guys in white hats, the guys in black hats. And when I talk to people, that's more they find out. It's like enemy center over and against. Not constructive, not, not a dialogue of my thoughts like you can deal with it. I stand where I stand over and against those idiots. It's like, that's the enemy part.
all the time. Their agenda, which tends to be one agenda.
Well, I don't think
The media is owned by.
Sure.
But I'm like, why are you so worried?
Yes.
You get there and check it out. I'm still going over that.
I agree. That's why I was listening.
Which is, it's deadly, when it comes to violence.
I agree.
Just create this whole mindset.
Yes.
It's gonna take it all down. There is no solution to terrorism.
Let's kind of address some issues, guys. I got nothing.
I so agree with that. How do you? No, I'm really good.
This is not, this is not some like mystery. How do we create a
Even though
Right.
some of them are, some of them drive every other day.
People who can't even drive it themselves. System now are like the sick of the sick. It's like we have a political class, which is, they're psychopathic. Look at it. Many of them, especially the Republicans, they're just registered lunatics. Totally, nothing against, mental illness, but this is not who should be running our country, and, or who should be role models. We know that when Donald Trump talks that people get beat up, and people get murdered, and murders in South Carolina, where, they so-called Manning line, that young man who was deluded about Confederate, sort of white supremacy. That talk is very dangerous. It's very dangerous, and to be elevating that to the level of political discourse is absolutely dangerous. And I think this is a challenge right now. Is for normal people to somehow steal their narratives and not be intimidated by the and to reclaim our
But among people are friends, right? So they're already Democrat or Republican. So even starting that conversation, you're starting, what
I mean, there are, the numbers actually have majority is not a lot of people are really pissed off.
Okay, well, that's hopeful.
Yeah, oh, it is. It's so much more open than you would think. In fact, majorities now disapprove of Democrats
two
and
parties.
Republicans. 55% of Americans support the Republicans.
Okay, so that when you said that earlier, I was statistics, and then if he only has a third of that 21%, that's what we gotta get that information out, because otherwise it just feels like this huge, overwhelming.
That's why I don't know if you were here when I was talking about how we need to be political verified. This is all about therapy. It's about getting back in touch, and it's about breaking up with your abusive political relationships with the Democratic Party. And stop making excuses for a power. Stop making excuses for a political party that is destroying you.
So
Because that's what it is.
You're right. I wish I had heard that.
So look, I need
organizers.
Yeah, thank you.
Will there be organizers in a campaign that help like do rallies?
Yes.
I would love to see I would love to participate in a rally.
Yes, so you will be hearing more about.
We should rally downtown dinner.
Yeah.
I think I do have some chance. I got to recall. Before you arrived, one of co-worker of mine in the Vineyard demanded in writing whether Jill Stein was in favor of the abolition of Israel on account of it being a Zionist state and therefore not a state that is involved in representing its citizens equally. And I answered, for the record, in writing, that not only I, but I think most Green Party members agreed that Israel cannot be abolished. It's not a way to go about foreign policy. Pick and choose states that you're going to abolish. And then we're going to have to stand instead, rather, for the rights of Palestinians, the human rights of Palestinians, like the rights of everybody. And that since Israel is a political ally, we need to use our leverage to assert those rights.
I would frame it slightly differently. I would say that our foreign policy needs to be very clear and consistent with international law and human rights. And currently, the state of Israel is in flagrant violation. So it's not our job to define nation states. I think it's not our job to tell Israel and Palestine how to work it out, but it is our job to stop funding human rights abuse and criminal war crimes, which is what we are funding. So, where does Netanyahu get his money? From Sheldon Adelson. The U.S. is empowering this apartheid war state in Israel. It wouldn't exist if we weren't making it possible. So let's stop making it possible. Let's stop making it inevitable by ceasing to fund. Nazi Germany would not have existed were it not for the Koch brothers and American corporate money that basically enabled Hitler to establish a Nazi state. So there are things that we can do here. America has been kind of on the wrong side of many conflicts and has created conflicts that we then get embroiled in. And, I've made incredible sacrifices with them. And these wars, so-called wars on terror, are extremely wrong-headed. We created the Mujahideen, remember? We armed them and financed them as part of an effort to stop the Soviet Union. So we created this little monster, which then we have empowered the Saudis to spread all over the world. And this is now coming back to bite us in a big way. So we need a weapons embargo to the Middle East for starters, and maybe everywhere. We need to stop arming all sides and inflaming this conflict. And we need to stop the funding of these, terrorist sources. We need to stop being an occupying force that's driving terrorism in the first place. But then we can cool the flames now. How do we fight ISIS? We don't fight ISIS by dropping more bombs. We're just going to create another ISIS. What we have to do is a weapons embargo and to stop the finances, particularly the Saudis.
So you said this is a mixture.
The question is Jill Stein sound on Israel? You will stop arming Israel with American weapons.
And not just Israel.
You also mentioned not providing Israel, but it is Israel that I'm telling you. I'm getting shots across the bow.
I get asked all the time, are you for a one state or a two-state solution?
I don't
that's
think
how
it's in
many
that
people.
terms. Yeah. That's a jargon there. Are we in the nuclear triad? And I understood, I read one well-known blogger tell us that since Trump couldn't answer a question about the nuclear triad, he was completely unrealistic as a president. What ridiculousness what Trump said in his answer was, when you're dealing with nuclear weapons, you have to be very careful. They get out of your control, and you're using for war.
Well, actually, we have to, we need to undo nuclear weapons.
I agree with that. We ought to
There's
abolish
no-
it. But
there's no
the issue is that if we start talking jargon words, single state, double
Yes,
state,
yes, yes,
it's
yes.
really not
Right,
getting to
right.
the
No,
real
that's-
issue.
right.
How much, at what point does the United States say to Israel, stop?
Yes.
We're not going to go there.
Oh, exactly.
And my
Right.
answer is
Now.
the United States, as you said,
That's right.
is not in the,
We are
is not in the business of deciding what states exist and what states don't exist. The United States is not in the business of bankrolling imperialist wars, and we ought to stop doing it ourselves and stop enabling
Right.
it.
That's right. You know, there's a longer discussion, a deeper one, about can you have democracies that are also, theocracies? You know, can you have religious governments and still be democratic? And, I'm dubious that that's possible. Personally, I don't have faith in the religious states. I think they're a very dangerous thing when religion and state structures get together. But I don't feel like that's my job. Put it this way, there are grassroots groups on the ground, human rights groups, who are Israeli and Palestinian, who are working it out great. They are working it out. And my feeling is that we need to lift up these grassroots human rights groups and let them build community and build trust. And that's how we work our way forward to solving this conflict. It's not by the U.S. coming in and saying, well, we're going to draw these boundaries like we want. No, this is for the people of the region to work out in a way that puts human rights and international law first.
It comes back somewhat to the Spanish Civil War. Is it right that the Spanish, French, and the English Parliament did not allow any weapons to go into state during the Spanish Civil War? The only countries that did, of course, allow weapons to go in were Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. And then the fascist won the Civil War. The other hand is, look what happened when you brought the Russians in. The Russians were interested in the Russian Parliament, more or less. It didn't matter to them who won or lost in Spain. They wanted to be in control of the anti-fascist movement. And so they butchered left and right among the leadership of the anti-fascist movement. They weren't sufficiently scholars.
Yeah. Well, this is why we need a worldwide embargo on all weapons and stop the war profiteering industry. Yes. All right, great.
Ready for picture of her?
Are you videoing all this on purpose or?
Yeah.
2, and 3. You know what? Let's do it this side because the lights are
Okay.
There we go. 1, 2.
I'm not going to abandon
There
you.
you go.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for coming.
Hey, what are you doing for me too? I don't have a camera. What are you doing for me? Put on Facebook? I never get my picture with
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, thank you.
It's about 6:10, transit time's 15 minutes.
Okay, all right. So we should probably, we should probably.
So a 35-minute buffer.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Onward.
What's your number? What's your phone number or your email address?
Are you on Facebook?
Turn on.
It's Bonnie Green. I don't know.
Any outstanding
Did you go to
donations
PCC?
or more?
You look really
I went to Linfield.
Oh, okay.
McMinnville.
Well, I think I see you around some events or something. So anyway, it's Bonnie.
This is the same here.
Oh, okay.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Great.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you can be my friend if you want to.
All right, so what we have here,
Okay, I'll tell you.
paying for you want to get $25, so.
Want to take a picture together?
Okay,
Like my
oh,
GPS.
oh, okay, that's cool. I was thinking in terms of cash.
Or you can do cash.
Well, I had no idea. I don't know how, all I know is whatever counts. Yes, all counts towards your
Yes.
national one thing. Okay.
$250.
We left at 9.
Okay, well, let me get the, it's kind of glare.
Oh, then you're somewhere else.
Okay,
Yeah,
now
right there, yeah, there's good. Yeah, that's right. Got it.
This is not my mailing address. This is
Thanks. Okay, bye.
All my life. Yeah. Are you going to the other thing?
Yeah. I have to deliver the package.
Might stop over there.
Where is it?
Please have it. What's on 18th Street? I'll get the address.
Union Station in Portland, directions.
No, I really will. You share with me, but I'd love to hear more about that concept. Because that's kind of really my wheelhouse.
Okay, so. Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that'll work fine.
So I have exact change. Thank you. There you go. $25. And now you are $25 this year, only matching fund, I guess, whatever it is. You already qualified.
Well, we're matching funds. What happens is this is double.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so.
So you're, guys are,
So I
finals,
will be
events would be.
that second interview.
It's a climate forum. People who went to Paris will be talking together about stuff related to climate.
And so it's not
And
specifically
this is
Green
down
Party,
here.
not Green Party per
It's
se.
actually a 350 event.
So
What 350? Yeah. What's 350?
Oh, okay, I'm not sure
I
what
need
that
to
is.
take
but that-
Jill from this
The climate
event
action.
to her house.
Probably dumb me up with the train station. Jill attended.
Yeah.
Just,
Well, you have a little conflict going on there.
Hello, world.
Oh, my goodness.
Hello,
I don't want
Sab.
to see me. That's why I'm behind the camera.
Oops, sorry.
Photographers never let me in front of the camera.
Just people. Hello.
Not without you. You're the one.
We've got our
Wanna
own.
come
We've
out?
got our own.
Oh, look at you got spotlight on you. Broski.
I had a Zodiac party.
And the food again.
Fine fare.
Fine fare.
Fine fare, fine fellow.
Yeah.
If you don't have time, I can.
I didn't get to say goodbye. Did you leave?
No.
Oh, good.
Well, where is this in relation?
That's what this is.
Well, downtown is pretty.
All right. So that was it. This will be recorded and posted, or just recorded on YouTube and left there. Thank you so much for joining.
Agenda for the next several days here.
Bye. Go Jill Stein. Oh, one thing before we leave. Some notes. Vote green for 2016. Empower people to find their political
Oh,
power.
okay, all right. I get it.
Reject
So after
lesser
tomorrow, you
evil
are done show
and
for-
stand up for the greater good. That's where your vote counts.
Are you needing
And
video
finally,
tomorrow or not?
politics of courage
Are you perfectly consistent?
instead of voting for your fears, because voting your fears actually creates those. Some
I don't know, I
nice
just-
little
I didn't know
takeaways from
what
today.
you wanted to-
Spread the word. If you can, go to jillstein.com. I'm sorry, jill2016.com and place your donation today. Let's turn the White House into a greenhouse. Cheers.
The building.